everybody.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict Show. Very, very excited to be with you here today on December. What day is that? Today?
The 12th. It is the
12th.
12th. Yeah.
So the month is already coming to an end. 23 will be over, then we'll be welcoming 24. So we'll talk about that in due time.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we got excited show for you today, guys. We're gonna be talking about three topics. We're gonna divide them up. So we'll talk about NATO. Why is this important? Is because what we've been saying all along now is becoming a reality.
Yeah.
Ukraine wasn't gonna be accepted in NATO. Period. NATO used Ukraine to serve its own interest. When I say NATO, I'm referring to the US. As a matter of fact, the Canadian President Zelensky is in Washington now, meeting with the senators, pleading for more
money.
assistance. How crazy that is. Second topic, we're going to be talking about how odd that is for the United States to be reaching out to its Gulf allies, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. It's not. The US is saying consulting. It's not. It's seeking help against the Houthis. And remember, only a few years ago, we were the ones supporting the Saudis and the Emiratis against the Houthis. And the third topic, it has to do with the recent veto that the US, against all odds, the rest of the world is like, what the heck? To me, it's the last nail in the coffin on the United States credibility. It's over. So that's what we're going to be talking to you about. But before we delve into all this, how many members do we have in the channel? By the way?
We have 89. We have
Come on, guys,
members.
help us cross through 100, please, because we want to do an exclusive Q&A for the members. So if we can get it this weekend, we'll get on the exclusive Q&A ASAP. So, and for those who wants to support us, check us out on Buy Me Coffee.
Yep.
Or any other means if you want to support the channel. Remember one thing, and we're proud of it. The content we provide here, it's not something you're just going to find anywhere else. Yeah, you can go and watch other videos and so forth, but you know how much time and effort we put into this to share this analysis. We're not a news station here. Let me just put this on the record. We're not a news. What we provide you is insights that will help you understand the dynamics of the global geopolitical landscape and navigate, really, when you start being bombarded with information from all over, you at least have some background to filter the noise from the reality. So that's what we're going to do.
So also we would like to say thank you to our show sponsor today. It's
Of course.
Wealth Research Group. They have a free newsletter. I've pinned the comments. We really appreciate our sponsors, because between you guys and our sponsors, that's the way we can do this show.
Yeah, the sponsors, we can't thank them enough, because you guys know how it is. It's just us, and now some sponsors are seeing the value of what we are providing. This is why you're noticing certain tactics from even YouTube, and I'm going to say it. I don't shy away. They kind of reduce the numbers of likes and so forth. You're all aware of those tactics, but shame. Anyway, shame on them. We're going to move on.
So anyway, thank you. And if you're interested, check it out in the link that I put on the pinned comment.
All right. Let's talk about NATO.
All right. So no NATO for Ukraine. So there's a Ukrainian politician, Oleksiy Goncharenko, and he basically came out on his Telegraph, which I will share up here. It's in Ukrainian, so if you translate it to English, it's a rough translation. But let's see, here it is. So he posted on his Telegram. And basically what he posted on his Telegram is that he said, unfortunately, there's not going to be a NATO for Ukraine. Forget about it. It won't happen. Now, there's a couple of other things that he said that were important, because I think at this point, it is not surprising that there's no NATO for Ukraine. Right. This has gone on for a very long time. And remember when Zelensky, he was with all of the other leaders. I forgot exactly which which summit this was, but he was all like huffing and puffing about how Ukraine needed to join NATO. And Biden put his hand on him and was like, just
simmer down,
simmer down,
simmer down, little boy.
Right. So there's been a lot that's actually come out about, there is dissent among the Ukrainian military, the generals and the officials sort of against Zelensky, saying that more or less, hey, you got to calm down and we've got to end this. This is absolutely not okay. So one of the other things that he said that was very, Goncharenko said that I think is very interesting is that it annoys the US elite to talk about assisting Ukraine or talking about Ukraine joining NATO. It annoys the US elite. Now, it's very interesting because very early in this conflict, we talked about the fact that NATO, this is basically a proxy war, right? Proxy war for the US with Russia.
Yeah.
And it seems now that we're looking at a situation where everything that we've been talking about is more or less becoming a reality.
Sure.
So I wanted to share this, and there's also something else I wanted to share because this is sort of quietly what's happening. If you notice, there's not big fanfare about the fact that so this is from the US mission to NATO. So this is from their Twitter X account. And this was very recent. So this was November 20th. So just a couple weeks ago. We're focused on setting the conditions for a just, durable, and sustainable peace.
Already between the lines.
Meaning this is over.
Yeah, it's over. It's been over for a while. We just didn't want to admit it.
Oh no, where'd it go? It's not on here.
So that is where the issue is. The idea is that now there are some elections going to be soon, and the new territory that is the eastern part of Ukraine, which most of them wants to side with Russia. I mean, it was a fait accompli way back. We just dragged it because it was more money for the MEC, that is the elites per se. But as far as the country itself, and this is why you have now insiders inside Ukraine, they are against Zelensky because they're seeing where the country ends up being carved out. It's over. Right. For those who've been arguing before, well, we can reach a deal with the Russians by returning the territory. Russia ain't gonna return the territory. End of story. And the what is gonna become now, it's just more and more. I mean, for the president, comedian Zelensky, he already got his two properties, one in Florida, one in Tuscany, in Italy. But this is not about all that. There are hidden information that just came out regarding when the Secretary of Defense went over there, and as a matter of fact, the CIA director went down there. One of the conversations that was with Zelensky, it was about citizenship
to the United States.
Yeah. So there's a document out there with the county in Florida, didn't specify the location, but that to me, though I understand how, because when I was in Washington, we've been part of dealing with this kind of stuff. Zelensky in this case, guys, wanted to have something in writing because he saw what happened to Saddam, for example. He saw what happened to others that have sided with the US, then we turned on them. He said, I ain't gonna move an inch now till I have a document. What was very interesting about it is there was no signature on it. So, and to me was the way I understood this one was during the trip of the Secretary of Defense and the CIA directors. Usually those will argue about you'll have a quiet life in Florida, but it never ends well. Mark my word on it. It will never end well. Doesn't matter. We might not hear it, think about it for a year, 2, 3, 5, but it's not going to end well because he knew too much. It was part of once you put the lid on that, you put it once for all. So, but the idea, just to go back to the main topic about the NATO itself, it was never the intention of NATO to because that just the understanding between the East and West, even though after the fall of the Soviet Union, was always that understanding that there are some red lines where you can cross. And the same thing that the Russian And I argue it in my Russia book back then. And I said, one thing that is now, as geopolitical analysts, you'll start to see the shifting of where the Berlin Wall used to be to where it is today.
Yeah.
Well, today it moved east. Well, to
Hugely
the Russians,
so,
to the Russians, they're gonna be saying, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't go any further here now, because they already got closer to Russia's doorsteps, even though we promised, but our promises, you all know how it is. We don't have any credibility anymore. So the idea of NATO, Ukrainian NATO, it was never going to happen. We used it as lip service for the Ukrainians to get them forward. I mean, everybody agreed on that statement. You'll fight the Russians till the last.
The Ukrainians.
That was true.
And that's what we're seeing right now. And I think that, you know, over and over and over again, the United States has sort of left its proxies or its allies to sort of fend for themselves. And right now, you know, Zelensky's asking for more money, but even Goncharenko, when one of the things that he addresses is he says that there will be, this is his take on it, his prediction, that there will be no more US aid for Ukraine in 2024. So next year, that's when the money dries up. And instead of just giving sort of a blank check of money to Ukraine, if they do get any money, it'll be in a loan. It'll be in the form of a loan instead of the form of a grant. So they'll have to pay that back.
Well, he's right. He's right, because you got some senators now, like the idiot Lindsey Graham. Funny how he now switched his conversation about supporting the border, our border. All of a sudden, politicians here in the US, are you going to trust them? Of course. We can trust them. And I wish most Americans will ask the logical questions as to why our aid is going to some farmland country that has nothing to do with our interests. That's just the reality of it. But for the aid and all that, because it became evident now to the US, Europe, the EU, well, the EU is useless anyway. For the US, it became evident that it was never about winning a war anyway. It was never about that. It was about just dragging the conflict. Except that this one, they figure out they can drag it for 20 years. This is why the Russians had to do what they had to do. I mean, come on. You're telling me the Russians couldn't really take over if they want to? But also they understood the implications of widening the conflict. It's exactly what's going on right now in the Middle East. And this is why the US find it by itself with Israel. That's it.
Oh, and that's very wild.
We'll get into that when we talk about that. But the idea of the EU, you're looking at Europeans are so weak. Europeans can move an inch without being told. Europeans have no sovereignty. I shall not generalize, of course. I'm talking about Germany. I'm talking about the UK. I'm talking about France. I'm talking about Italy. Those are the key pillars inside Europe, but their decisions, their political decisions, will have to run through Washington first. You know, when you hear about the policies in Brussels for NATO, because that's where the headquarters is, well, the policies are not in Brussels. They are in Washington. You know, it's the same argument that's been made about Australia. Australia's decisions are not made in Canberra. They are made in Washington. So I'm finding out the same now for Japan and South Korea regarding the recent meeting between the National Security Advisor and those two representatives of those countries. So the idea of to understand that all of a sudden NATO is saying, well, we can't take Ukraine to, it was clear from the get-go. And again, if Zelensky was smart enough, he would have learned from what happened to Georgia.
Well, but I don't think he had much of a choice. Do you? I mean, once he was put where he was
because he followed
told what to do,
but also he followed the money.
He
did it also because of what's in it for him financially. Let's just say straightforward. If he was a man of decency, a man of character who cares for his country, he would say no. As a matter of fact, he was a peace deal out there with the Russians.
Absolutely. And that's not
so why did he back down?
Absolutely.
Just because the US told you not to. So if you were a man enough, you take stand for your own country. This is why for us and our incompetent president doing the idiotic when it comes down to foreign policy, they have nothing to do with our. You don't represent me.
Yeah.
I don't see Biden or any politician for that matter represent me.
Yeah.
No. It's the same arguments that was made of as far as, well, we can't just say, well, it's because we wanted to help Ukraine. It was never about helping Ukraine.
No, it never. And in that case, even if it was about helping the spread of democracy, which or helping the end of democracy or whatever it is, nobody says that anymore, right? Nobody says any as this,
because it doesn't hold.
And it's very funny watching politicians say, well, it's because of democracy.
Yeah.
Well, Ukraine, Zelensky put off elections. And that's interesting that right now, even the US is pressuring Zelensky for elections. So they are holding elections, to my understanding. They're holding them next year because Zelensky's been pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. But as he becomes more and more unpopular, the United States is saying, well, now you got to hold some elections.
That's why he's here in Washington trying to meet with the senators. And again, those damn senators, they don't represent me. They don't. No. I don't trust politicians in Washington. I worked there, so you kind of understand how. And once you understand that reality, and this is what most Americans do not know or understand. I hope they can wake up at some point. Is the reality of it. I don't know why, but
well, I think pain helps people wake up in a sense. And right now, financially, the United States is in very bad financial situation.
I want to say thank you to KL. Thank you so much for your super stickers. So truly appreciate it. It's the idea of how Europeans, even Europeans themselves, now they understood what they're getting into, the politicians. But now this is why you're seeing the rise of the far right in Europe, and that, in my opinion, is going to change the trajectory for. Not 100%, by the way.
Sure.
Changing the trajectory, excuse me, will be on a minimum level because it takes a while for policies to be implemented to change the direction of a country.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me how Germany is going to go back to what it was economically.
I can't imagine.
No way. It's going to take time for it. So once the Germans realize that their chancellor is not equipped for that position, their foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, is not equipped for that position. Same thing for Britain. Same thing for Italy. Once the people, but you have to wait for the cycle. This is why, for us in the West, every policy depends on the political outcome for the next cycle.
Absolutely.
So it's all based on a cycle. Not on a strategic vision.
And if you're looking even at the US right now, we're in an election cycle, right? Which means the behavior of politicians changes dramatically from the rest of their tenure, right?
And same thing for the gas prices.
Same for gas prices.
You start to notice gas prices going down because the elections are coming. When in reality, it's a tactic. Most Americans are not going to pay attention. But what they're going to be thinking? Oh, the Biden administration is doing great by reducing the gas. No.
You know what bothers me the most about that is if they're doing it right now, they could have done it before.
Way back.
They could have done it when Americans were hurting.
They
could have done it. It's the same with San Francisco, right? So when President Xi Jinping came from China, they cleaned up San Francisco, which means they could have cleaned up San Francisco before. They just didn't feel like it. They just didn't want to. There wasn't enough reason to do it. Well, what about our quality of life?
That's true.
What about the quality of life for the rest of us? And it's the same with things like food prices and, what conversation really is there about combating inflation here in the United States? There really isn't any. There's some whispers of like, well, here's some things that we're maybe doing. We're raising interest rates, whatever. It doesn't address any fundamental problems. And when we're talking about the fact that, NATO, Ukraine is coming for money and blah, 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 right? There is no actual political will to combat inflation, because if there was, they would. If they wanted to clean up San Francisco when they wanted to, they did.
Well, because our politicians are corrupted. Straightforward. is the truth, is the reality.
It is.
And there is no other way of saying it, because you can't sugarcoat the truth.
Right.
Either this or that. There is nothing in between. And until Americans wake up to this reality, but again, how would you expect Americans to understand those basic dynamics when they don't have an understanding even of the Constitution in itself, as far as what the role of a citizen into the system? You know, they're big, but also we shouldn't, because I gotta be fair and be realistic.
Sure.
You can't just be blaming the government for everything.
Agreed. Absolutely.
People bear responsibility as well. You know, you get the consequences of the actions you take. You don't go and blame others. But it was your decision. In this case, in understanding how the system works, if you don't just go and blame the government. Take responsibility for it.
And as you're talking about that, I think that's very true, because I will say one thing about the situation in Ukraine. Could it have gone on for a decade? Probably.
Oh, yeah.
I think the plan actually was for it to go on for a really long time. You started hearing some rumblings about, you know, how we're going to continue into 2025 and 2026 out of, I think it was out of Canada that we brought up the articles and
I remember that.
Showed that there were plans for this to continue. You know, the thing that I believe really stopped this is public opinion.
Because it started to shift.
It started to shift.
But not only that, because also Russians moved tactically differently.
They did.
Which suggested that, Ukraine won't be able to handle that. That means what? We in the West, we have to get involved or just let it roll. And that's exactly what happened. Yes, public opinion played a role into this, but also Russia's military tactics played another role into this. This is why the Eastern Ukraine is gone. And they're going to move on, and we'll see.
Well, and I'll also add that U.S. sanctions didn't destroy the Russian economy.
No,
I think that also
it backfired. That's when now it paved
absolutely.
the way for the system to go a different direction.
And that was, I don't believe the U.S.
They didn't know.
They didn't know
because that was stupid decisions to even embark on thinking short term. They didn't understand that the Russians will be within their means to influence the financial system going where it is. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, I read a report that now China conducted its first oil transactions in renminbi, in digital currency. That's another topic for another day.
It is, but you're absolutely right. There's a very critical part of that where the United States didn't think that this is how this would play out.
All right, let's move on to our next topic here.
All right.
And next topic has to do with our incompetent president reaching out to the Gulf allies, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, seeking help regarding the Houthis. Houthis is also another term. It's the Western terminology for it. The real name for it is called Ansarullah, which means guardians of God. That's the Arabic word for it. Except that in the Western for us in the West, we use the term Houthis. We don't use, but if you go to the Middle East, you're gonna hear the term Ansarullah, not the Houthis.
Got it. Yeah.
The reason why they use the Houthis is because in there, I think I still have. I don't know if I have a map here, whatever, but
I have a map if you want it.
It was one specific one that I was looking for right here, but let me share it with you guys. Then you'll see share screen and Yemen map. So why I want to share this with you right here. Can you see it?
There it is.
So the reason I wanted to share this with you is to understand this area right here where I'm pointing out. I don't know if they can see the cursor. What is going now?
Anyway, they can see it.
Right here. This is Saada. Saada is in the north. I was in Sana'a. I spent a lot of time, and this is where the Houthis are headquartered. And if you notice, this area here, Ar-Rub al-Khali desert. This is a desert here. So here is what's fascinating. I've been in that part of the world, and I have pictures I'm going to share here if you guys want to see it.
Yeah, please show them.
Here's a picture.
Oh,
that's the same area. What it is, just a desert and rocks. This is one here.
Desert
this
as far as the eye can
another one
see.
here. I'll share it with you guys. And really, it's just a desert. And they call it Ar-Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter. That's the Arabic word for
That
it.
seems very reasonable.
Yeah, we were
considering.
the only ones there.
Yeah,
And as a matter of fact, I had a flat tire.
Uh-huh.
So it
So
was a
how
flat.
did you get around?
We just fix it. You fix it and you
fix
move
the
on.
flats with what?
With a spare tire. You
Oh,
just
yeah,
have to
yeah,
drive
yeah,
slowly in that
yeah.
terrain. But usually you always carry a full tire with you. That's another one.
Mhm.
Someone said I was lost my mind.
Yeah,
And I said, I see you only live once. Come
yeah.
on.
David
You only
K
live
says,
once.
I guess Dr. Oualaalou isn't afraid of heights,
Yeah.
sitting like that on that ledge.
It just
Yeah, I agree. I agree with
just
you, David
enjoy
K.
life. Here's the last one here. But here is the best of them all is right here.
Oh.
How about this one?
Oh my God. Look at you.
Yeah. And this is last one was when we went on right in the sand here.
That actually looks like
so.
fun.
I just wanted to share this with you. But my point, guys, just to highlight to you in this map here is this region here, Sada. So now this is where the Houthis are. Let me stop this. This is where the Houthis are, and of course, with the attacks, they've been because they targeted 3 commercials, and I've seen the videos and I confirmed those. As a matter of fact, I do have an image of one of the ships right here.
Okay.
Yeah, they took over that one.
Yeah,
they took over that one.
And if you see the picture of the ships that are taking them over, they're much smaller.
Now there are some conversation about having the Somali pirates there. It's beside the point. The fact that
that's not new. Those are not
but
new.
not that. It's not about that. It's about the fact that the U.S. couldn't retaliate.
Yeah,
that tells you something right there. And you know what it means?
Yeah.
That means we don't know the capabilities they might have.
Yeah.
Which means the missiles that they could. Because here's the reality of what I need you to understand. The reason why the Houthis are forward about this, about attacking Israel and so forth, they don't care.
Yeah.
Because yes, there is an Iron Dome in Israel.
Yeah.
Yes, it will provide missiles. If the 15 missiles is gone, all it's going to take is one missile.
Yeah.
One missile to go through. And if when that missile lands in one of those settlements, guess what the problem is that the settlements are not equipped to handle something like that. So what you're going to end up seeing, everybody fleeing. You already have about almost 400,000 people left Israel already. Settlements is going to become, which means what? You have to put this within the big picture of the thinking of what the Prime Minister of Israel was thinking about.
Yeah.
The expansion of settlements now is going in reverse.
Yeah.
This is why the Israelis were pushing the Gazans to go south, because the south's going to go to Egypt. It ain't going to happen. So the U.S. now finding itself concerned about what do we do?
Yeah.
And that's why what they wanted to do is they wanted to drag Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates into conflict against Houthis, which will not happen. You know why? Because Saudi Arabia and Yemen and Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates couldn't defeat the Houthis a few years ago. Remember, only 4 years ago, was fighting. We were the one providing intelligence to the Saudis. As a matter of fact, there's you won't be able to find the record for this because it wasn't off record altogether. Some planes in the Saudis will have to be flown by US.
That's interesting. That's very
it's just the way it is, because we were providing that. And the moment the Houthis start launching missiles into oil refineries inside Saudi Arabia, the equation has changed. This is what the US is concerned about. And he wanted to get the Saudis and the Emiratis to get involved.
Yeah. Oh no, and that's crazy. I cannot imagine. I cannot imagine them really getting involved in that. That seems ridiculous.
Well, the Saudis and the Emiratis will be stupid of them to even entertain the idea. Why?
Yeah.
Because they will be marginalized in the Muslim world. This is why the Saudi foreign minister lashed out at the US after the vote in the UN Security Council, which we will talk about.
We'll talk about that next.
They're not going to do that. Saudis don't want to lose, because if they got marginalized in the Muslim world, it's bad news, especially now that you are seeing the Saudis have reestablished diplomatic ties with Iran. There's no more conflict between them in the Middle East. The whole Middle East is shifting east. There is a good relationship between the Russians and the Middle Eastern countries. between the Chinese and the Middle
And the
Eastern
Middle
countries,
yeah.
and you're seeing where that shift is. So why will the Saudis or the Emiratis, for that matter, will agree to what the US said? No.
And it's very interesting because even now the intelligence officials are saying, well, we can't determine if the US warship was the target or not, right?
No.
So they can't officially come out and say, well, it was the target, because that would mean that there would have to be pretty direct action taken. And so they're just saying, well, we don't know. We don't know.
And they can't, because if they would have done it, they would have done it against Iran.
Right.
Because remember, it's not a secret. Houthis are armed by Iran.
Yeah, that's well
Hezbollah
known.
is armed by Iran. Hamas is armed by Iran. Islamic Jihad is armed by Iran. It's not a secret. It's been, for those who know about the Middle East, it's nothing secret about it. Where the big concern today is that we do not know what the type of missiles those entities have. Now, we shared this with you before, guys, that there are over 150,000 missiles in Hezbollah's possession. What type? Nobody knows.
And that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a
nobody
ridiculous
knows.
number.
And those are not, I checked the information, those are not a rocket, RPGs, what? No, we're talking about missiles.
Yeah.
And that led to the question of, how did these missiles get there to begin with? 150,000.
Yeah.
This is why Israel couldn't go. And this is why Israel couldn't go to Lebanon.
Yeah. And
if you only know what's going on in that part of southern Lebanon and the north of Israel, you know, the Hezbollah is targeting, destroying certain units, Israeli units. We don't hear much about it.
We're not hearing very much about it.
And we will talk about this in Rumble stuff, because that one you can detail more stuff. But I've seen the images, and the images that I saw, not from here.
Yeah.
I saw the images through satellites.
Yeah.
You can hide that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And those sources for that were credible. You know, usually I won't say something if I am not certain of. But they are, in fact, of course, the casualty amounts still vary. There's disparity between.
Very different.
The last research, the last statements came out of the Ministry of Health in Gaza, suggest that so far they're about 17,000.
Yeah, that's what I saw too. Is
about. But here is the thing. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this to put a comparison to why the US is asking the Saudis and the Emiratis. Did you know during the war against the Houthis, 150,000 people died in Yemen?
Jeez, yeah.
That shows you the US understands they won't, despite our military might.
Right.
The world now sees we couldn't win in Afghanistan. We couldn't win in Iraq. What makes us think we could have go ahead and engage the Houthis?
Yeah.
And second, because Houthis understand that the missiles they have are within reach rather, to all Israel.
Yeah.
As I said, the Iron Dome might protect, but it takes only one to get through.
Well, and we watched what happened with the Iron Dome during
which
this
failed,
attack, which did fail.
It failed. Same thing happened in the Saudis.
Yeah.
When the Patriot missile systems, they failed to counter or to take down the missiles that the Houthis launched, because they attacked one of the oil refineries. So and mind you, this is what I'm saying. When the US is saying, oh, we are in consultation. No, you're not in consultation. You are seeking help because you know you can't do it alone.
Right.
And that's, to me personally, it highlights literally how fragmented our foreign policy is. We don't have any, because now we are isolated.
Absolutely. And I think maybe that's the biggest point right now, is what allies does the US really have in the Middle East other than Israel? So right now we have Israel, but look at the deteriorating relationship between the Saudis and the United States.
Yeah.
I remember, I guess it was maybe a year ago or so, where Biden, Biden
went to Saudi Arabia
to ask
for
oil, and they said no, they wouldn't answer his call, and they told him flat out no. That to me is a deteriorating relationship, whether they're willing to say that it is or not. If you won't take the call of the president of the United States, that's a deteriorating relationship.
And that tells you right there that the US credibility no more. Let me say thank you here to Maner, saying thank you so much for your super sticker. First time I see this name here.
Oh yeah.
So good to have you here in our community. We're very excited to have you here. So thank you so much. So the idea of the US asking for this is because those countries now, they're going to be asking themselves,
yeah,
haven't we learned from what happened in Iraq? Haven't we learned what happened in Afghanistan? What makes us think that? And second, even if they don't ask themselves that question, the key that's going to be is the idea of, if they ever side with the US, they will be marginalized in the entire Muslim world. It's already, and I'm one of those that argue that already most of the Arab countries are doing just talks. There is no action. When it comes down to talks and photo ops, they're great at that. But in action, you'll find out they couldn't move an inch.
Well, in action, they seem to be looking out for whatever the best interest is, at least of the people who are ruling, right? At least of the people.
It's the survival of the
in charge.
It's the survival of the regime. That's what it's always been about.
Survival of the regime. That's a great way to
put that. And that led
to
a question: could the U.S. sort of have a leverage over the survival of the both monarchies?
Maybe.
Yes and no, but at this stage, especially when it comes down to the US-Saudi relations, they moved in a different direction altogether. To me, the signs, I've been seeing them for a while. That's why I wrote a book about Saudi Arabia, because of that. I've seen the signs that this relationship is coming to an end. And usually when you have, for the US, because we only depended on one specific aspect that maintained our dominance there. And you know what it is? Can anybody tell me? That's question for you.
Great. Yeah.
Here's a question. What helped the US maintain its dominance in the Middle East? So if you can type in the chat box, I'd like to read your feedback to that. And I'm not going to answer it now. I'll answer it as we move forward here. So the idea becomes now, the thinking, you got one country that is siding with Israel in the Gulf states. Does anybody know which country is that? I'm putting everybody on the spot. No, I like to have their contributions to the conversations. You guys are smart enough now to know how things are, and you've been with us for a long time now. You know how. So
all right, we got a bunch of right answers. Go and check in here.
Let me see. Saudi product. Okay,
scroll up a little bit.
Which one? Yeah, Saudi. What was the question?
What solidified the U.S.
Oh yeah. What led to the U.S. dominance? Saudi bargain Qatar to a degree, petrodollar to a degree, Jordan, Saudi Arabia to a degree. Yeah, you're right, David K. But there's one particular issue that doesn't exist anymore. That issue doesn't exist anymore, which means it ended the U.S. influence in the Middle East. So, military to a degree. What was the question again? The question is, what was helping the U.S. influence in the Middle East? There was one particular issue. That issue doesn't exist anymore. And with it comes the end of the U.S. influence in the Middle East. Iran. You guys got in. Oh, he got it. He got it. You got it. Oh, not Bahrain.
Nope, not that one either. Go up further.
Right there.
Yeah, there it is.
No, why no.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
You're absolutely correct.
Oh my God, I can't grab it. Here it is. All right. Is it that?
You're absolutely correct.
Yep.
China was able to broker that deal. And why am I saying this? It's because you have to go all the way back from the establishment of the Saudi sovereignty in 1932, but also you have to go right after 1979. What happened in 1979 in Iran? And from that point forward, we were able to manage that wedge between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And we came to realize if we maintain the level of tensions between the two, we'll maintain our dominance in the Middle East. Now that issue is not there anymore. It's gone. It's gone. This is why you're seeing the war in Yemen ended. And this is why you're seeing Yemen Houthis are taking forward step. You're seeing Hezbollah taking a forward step, but the US or Israel couldn't attack them. They won't be able to, because they are concerned about what the reaction is going to be, what type of weapons, because we don't know till today. We do not know what type of missiles Iran has, and Iran has developed the hypersonic, by the way, with the support of both China
and
and
Russia.
Russia.
Yeah. Well, and I think looking at it from a human behavior perspective, this is a very interesting example of the fact that the US is concerned about its own dominance now, period. Because if we did feel confident, if the United States did feel confident in this situation that they would actually be backed up, they would say, well, here's the attack on the USS Carney.
Yeah.
And they didn't. So I think it's very important to pay attention to more or less the chess moves of this.
Of course.
So they're going and asking for help. And I suspect the CIA probably does know what the weapons capabilities are. And that almost is a worse admission of knowing what they are and not being able to combat them, knowing that they can't either win or that the cost of that would be too much. So that's almost a worse admission to make.
But at the same time, Iran is no Iraq.
Yeah, for sure. Thank
you so much for your super sticker. Thank you. It's been a supporter, avid supporter of both channels, by the way.
Somebody up here said that means friend in Chinese.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't know.
See, now you know why I wanted to learn Chinese back then when the Pentagon called me.
Right.
It was my mistake. I don't blame anybody else. It was my mistake. I didn't persist on that.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's move on to our next. Let me just conclude this one here. Just want you to understand the reason why we are in so-called consultation with allies is not about consultation, is we are seeking their help because they both, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, had first experience with dealing with the Houthis. And Houthis, by the way, are fierce fighters. They are fierce fighters. So I don't think so they're going to move forward with that. Remember, there's still agreements between the US and those countries as far as security. But in this issue here, it's going to be different because they see the consequences will backfire on them. So. All right, let's move on to our next topic.
Before we move on to our next topic, we have to do our sponsored
Let's do
post.
that. Yes. Let's do that. Because we're going to have to do that, guys, for our sponsor, because that's the one supporting.
Well, and if you guys want to check it out, we really do appreciate this sponsor. They've been a really fantastic sponsor for us.
Yeah.
And they have a free newsletter. It's what's in the pinned comment, or if you're watching this later, it's in the description below. So Wealth Research Group, they have a free newsletter. They more or less talk about gold. They talk about the pluses and minuses of gold, what's happening. There was a very dramatic shift in financial conditions on November 3rd. Particularly focusing on gold and commodity markets. After 12 years that were very, very challenging, the management of gold mining companies have seen significant improvements. And so, right now we're going through a very challenging financial time, not just in the United States, but globally. So check out their, let me share this with you guys. Check out their free newsletter if you want to. Like I said, they've been a pretty good sponsor for us. So check out their free newsletter if you would like to know more about investing in gold and gold mining specifically. All right. Are you ready for the third topic, David?
All right.
Okay. So the third topic is one that is globally deeply embarrassing. And that is that the United States actually vetoed a UNSC ceasefire in Gaza. And the US and Britain were the only two out of everybody. Britain abstained, and then the United States vetoed it without any real reason to do so. And globally, it was very, very embarrassing. And the rest of the world is pretty upset about it. So would you like to hear some of the responses? So the United States, the deputy U.S. ambassador to the UN, Robert Wood.
Mr. Wood.
Yes. Oh God. Okay. Told the council that the draft resolution was rushed. It was rushed and it was imbalanced and it was divorced from reality that would not move the needle forward on the ground in any concrete way, which that is so vague. That is so vague as to what that
yeah.
means. And he said, we do not support this resolution's call for an unsustainable ceasefire that will only plant seeds for the next war. That is so vague. That is not saying anything that helps in any real way.
Yeah.
It to me, these words feel like the right words to say in his opinion, but that don't actually mean anything. And only plant the seeds for the next war. I bet the people who are in conflict right now would sure like this one to end first, and then take some diplomatic solutions to really figure out how to solve this problem so that neither side is suffering anymore. What on earth? What is it? What is a real viable reason to continue this? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
Well, and I'm interested, what in your guys' opinion, what is the actual reason that the United States vetoed this ceasefire against all of the other countries? And even when it came to the UK, they even had a much, because they abstained. So they had a much.
But abstaining doesn't mean a thing.
No, it doesn't.
Abstaining was a subtle way of following the orders of the master.
But I do think it's interesting that they didn't veto also.
They won't veto it because it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it doesn't make sense for the veto itself.
Yeah. We'll say more about that.
Meaning all you need for veto is one member.
Yeah.
That's it. The resolution is, so why have two? It just doesn't make sense.
And
what it makes sense is the idea is that they are following the masters, except in a different setting.
Yeah.
Rather than declaring the veto, they're going to go just with abstain. Yeah. This way, they'll say, hey, we're going to present to the rest of the world that we are not. When in reality, we all know UK is gone. UK is useless. UK is useless. As a matter of fact, at the time of this conversation here, guys, the UK decided to send its recon planes over Gaza. So they are conducting recon missions in Gaza. So that begs the question, why the heck is UK doing in Gaza airspace? That shows you right there.
Yeah, what on earth are they doing?
You claim about the international law, but where is the international law? Where is the sovereignty of airspace of a nation? It's all hypes, no more, no less. This veto is much bigger problem than the US ever anticipated. But here is the reality of it, the way I see it. This veto, beside the issue of Israel, there is another issue. Do you know what it is? Can you guess?
What is it?
Try, guess.
I don't know.
That puts you on the spot.
Put me on the spot.
Yeah. It has to do with payback against Russia when it vetoed in Syria. Because in Syria, it was the US that's calling for the international military presence, international force. Russia vetoed it. So to me, that's a payback. And this is why it begs the question, is it time for this UN Security Council to cease to exist to begin with? It's no different than NATO.
For what point?
Because here is the reality of it.
Yeah.
It is much needed. A new world order is much needed today than at any time before, including the changes to the UN. First of all, you have to move the UN out of New York. You move it to a neutral country. And second, even the UN itself, I've always believed United Nations, is toothless. They can't do anything. So either dissolve it, let countries do whatever they want to do, their own countries, they decide. Or you're going to have to reform that. The 5 permanent, it shouldn't be 5 permanent. Even in Russia itself, believe it or not, they were calling for changes to the UN Security Council. Even Russia itself.
Yeah.
It's because this idea of the 5 permanent, well, what does it mean? 5 permanent means what? What about the other countries? What about do it on a rotational basis?
Yeah.
You put members, like there are 15 members in the UN Security Council.
Yeah.
Just for you guys to know. But the 5 permanents are the one that hold power.
Right.
That's why it only takes one to veto. It's over.
Well, and that seems very strange that it only takes one to veto.
That's
voting doesn't work that way. right? And
not in the UN Security Council. That's how it works.
But that's what I'm saying.
I see what you mean.
Is that doesn't make sense, right?
That's how it works. It becomes the calculations of, if you have to go back to, for example, in the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, mainly 80s, towards after the Soviet war in Afghanistan and so forth, and you start to, from that point forward, if I recall, my memory serves me well, from that point forward, because I've been watching the decisions of the UN Security Council. It was part of my academic background. I had to keep up with that. It was always became clear to me that it was just about the calculations. And if I voted today, I'll let you have it, but next time is going to be mine. Because it will be an issue. Not all of them is going to agree with. And this is why I am leaning towards saying this vote wasn't about just Israel. It was about payback for Russia winning Syria, because Bashar al-Assad in Syria still in power. We said we're going to remove him, still in power. So, and because of what? Because of Russia. And Russia also didn't allow foreign military in Syria, because it will turn that country, like what happened in Lebanon back in the 80s, when you had the international force. Most of them, even in Afghanistan, you have them under the ISF, International Security Force, or they call them in Beirut, in Lebanon, back then they used to call them the blue helmets. Because the UN the blue helmets. But here is one thing that a lot of people do not know. Did you know that anytime the blue helmets are deployed, the US will not fall under the order of the commander of the unit?
That's interesting.
We will never fall under the orders.
Keeping the power.
Exactly. This is why you think about NATO. Who's the commander? The military commander of NATO is always a 4-star general from the US.
Well, the US Europe primarily funds it also. So there's a lot of money going in there.
That is true. So, but the thing now, the big picture to all this now is really how this vote, as I said, put the last nail in the coffin for US credibility. And it also highlighted how fragmented and fractured American foreign policy is. Biden and his team, or his government, or his cabinet, whatever term you want to use, are clueless, are useless, and be just reacting to events. That anytime you do that in foreign affairs, when you do that, that means you don't have a strategy in place. And this, to me personally, because now the world sees what do we call the veil has been lifted. That's it. Because credibility, there are those who say, why are you criticizing America for? No. This is about what's right and what's wrong. It's not about criticizing or not criticizing. That's usually always a weak argument. It's what's right and what's wrong. We know that was wrong to veto something like this against ceasefire. Simple as that. Has nothing to do with Israel. Has nothing to do. I have nothing against Israel or whomever for that matter. But when it comes down to doing the right thing, you can be cherry picking. Well, I'll do right today, but not tomorrow. That doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And this decision, I mean, I know what's her name, the U.S. ambassador, Green. Her name is Green. The ambassador, and Wood, the deputy ambassador. It's not them, by the way, guys. They've been following orders. It's Biden. Straightforward. That's why I kind of I'll say it. Shame on you, Biden, for doing that, because it's not right.
The Biden's administration.
The whole thing. Biden doesn't know even, poor guy. But that's where the idea is now. It highlights really that we're so fragmented. We're so fragmented, politically speaking. And when it comes down to the international stage, this casts more doubt about Americans' credibility. We got none left.
Well, you know what? And talking about, because people do say that sometimes. People say, well, you're criticizing America, whatever. It's not about that. This looks very bad on the global stage. This looks terrible.
The only country. Okay. Before the vote on the UN resolution, I think 124, if I'm not mistaken, or 1204, I forgot the number. The entire world, the US was the first to ban it. 144 countries voted for. 14 countries voted against, starting with the US. But 40 countries abstained from that. Beside that, we don't, countries are free to do whatever they want.
Right.
But again, this is about right and wrong. You know, I'll say to for example, the British that have been arguing for this. Well, how about allowing Israel to have a place in the UK? How do the British feel about that?
It's
You know what I
interesting.
mean?
Also,
Same for us.
Absolutely.
How about having Israel right here in the US?
Right.
Establish their country right here.
Right.
How do you think Americans will feel?
Well, the Brits sort of, in a sense, caused this problem.
Well, one created the problem with the partisan back then,
which has not really been addressed very much, in case anyone was wondering. But I think you're absolutely right in this circumstance. It's really about what is right, what is the right thing.
It's straightforward.
And you know, the argument about Israel defending itself, of course it has the right to defend itself. Of course it does. But globally, you're looking at all, more or less, unless it is directly influenced by the United States, the rest of the world is saying, guys, this is very unbalanced. And the death toll keeps rising. And we don't fully understand why you're against a ceasefire. I have not heard anything out of the US that makes any real sense to me as to what the real argument with the ceasefire actually is.
You want the answer?
Yeah.
It's because Congress is owned by the Jewish lobby.
Yes,
the lobbyists in Israel. That's why in US decisions, you know, even the president himself, president is useless. American president is useless because the decisions are made within the hand of a few that controls the process. I'm part of it. I mean, heck, you have now, what's his name? Steven Spielberg, coming up with a movie about how Hamas is the one that is causing all this. I mean, come on, man. But if you understand the relationship between Steven Spielberg and the CIA, it will make more sense to you why that is. So it just shows you right there that for Washington, it's the elites that controls that process. And this is why they're saying no to the ceasefire. So what the president ended up doing? I was interviewed a few days before the vote. I was interviewed on Wednesday. Tuesday and Wednesday with Misfit. Misfit is in Washington, D.C. And they asked me that question. And I said, I don't see the U.S. supporting that. They're going to veto it. Biden's going to be taking a major strategic calculations regarding the upcoming elections. But for this, he's going to be pressured to go that route.
Well,
and that's what
and I want to bring up one more thing in terms of the Ukraine situation, because, you know, I don't think that the United States expected it to end the way that it did. And that is a very clear sign to me that the power that the US once had is waning. And to be alone in the world in terms of these types of decisions, I think is exactly what you're talking about, David. It's fragmented foreign policy, and it's bad foreign policy. Well,
you don't have to say it about Ukraine. You can say it about Israel itself.
Okay.
It's because they're two separate.
They're two separate things, but I wanted to point out the similarities in terms of conflicts are now not going in the direction that the United States anticipated them going in.
But there is a distinctions between the two.
Definitely.
The
I'm not saying
Ukraine
that.
has different trajectory for it versus the Israel trajectory.
Sure.
So we can overlap the two because it'll create confusion.
Guys, I don't mean that.
I do challenge her.
Don't say it in the comments.
So, no,
I understand.
That's the whole idea of the conversation. That's because that's what our viewers expect from us. Because it's just the idea. Mainly, your point will be more applicable to Israel than it will be more into the Ukraine. I understand the big picture of it.
Right.
It's just for this one because this one of a specific reason. And the reason being because you do not want peace in the Middle East, because peace does not bode well for Israel.
Right.
Israel strive when there's conflict in the Middle East. U.S. influence when there is conflict.
Right.
Now you don't have this anymore.
Right.
What's left? You got now an issue that have turned, and the Middle East has always been that way. Anytime there is a conflict in the Middle East, it will draw the attention of the world. Why? Because the Middle East is a center of gravity. For its economic resources, natural and so forth. And now you're looking at where things are headed, the changes, how now we're going to close 2023 and start 2024. And this is the indication, like the veto that the US
Yeah.
did. It's an indication for what lies ahead. What the US doesn't think. It's not that they know. They know. It's not they don't think. They know how the history books is going to now be talking about this dark era in American history.
Yeah.
Because it's a dark era.
It really is a dark era.
When we are closing our eyes on what's right, when we are contributing to war crimes, genocide, whatever term you want to use for that, those are, you can't be cherry picking. This is what I'm saying. When it comes down to dealing with those issues, you state the fact as they are.
Yeah.
So, like you mentioned, whether Israel defend itself, yes, it does have
absolutely,
like every other nation.
Like every other
but
nation.
When you step beyond the boundaries of self-defense, like what we are witnessing, what does bombing a hospital has to do with your self-defense? Let's just face it.
Well, and there are reasons, right?
Yeah.
Like that
but also there are rules of engagements. You
Right.
can't you can't do that.
Absolutely. And even if you're going to take that aside and you're just going to look at it from a foreign
Yeah.
policy perspective,
Yeah.
the fact that the United States is alienating itself to this extent is a bad deal.
Well, it's been going this way for
It
at
has.
least for the last, to me, for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
We start to see the signs back then. It's going. I remember I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, and I was like, well, I see this is going to slow. What led you to think that way? I said, well, I'm seeing signs for where this is headed. So,
well, and you're right. It's one step at a time, right? It's not all at once.
That's how the demise of empires is.
Exactly.
It starts with one step at a time. And now we're seeing it onto the financial sector.
Absolutely.
It's coming, guys, on the financial sector. So make sure you educate yourself. You educate yourself about the financial aspects. We can stress this enough.
Absolutely.
So let me wrap this up, and we'll take a question or two. So just for you to understand, the vote, the veto one, that is.
Yeah.
And again, this is my opinion. Take it or leave it, whatever you want. So it's a nail in the coffin on American credibility, because this is it. Now, anytime America is going to say, well, we stand for human dignity. What dignity? When you turn that, we stand for democracy. What democracy? We stand for the rule of law. What's rule of law? Because those now are gone, because we did it to ourselves. So it behooves us to not be talking about those anymore.
Well, and because you're right, it lost credibility.
No,
those things that it doesn't make any sense.
It's gone. It's gone.
Do you want to take a question?
Yeah, I'd like. I always like questions from our community. But this is why we wanted to have the membership. You guys, if you want to become a channel member supporter, just go ahead, sign up for that, and we will interact in the Q&A, because that will be just exclusive Q&A. All we do is answer your questions. That's all we're gonna do.
And I'm gonna promote our Rumble and our Locals.
Yes.
Rumble and Locals are and guys, if you have a question, please put the word question in front of it so I can see it easily. Our Rumble and Locals are places where we can speak more freely. And I don't know about you, but I really enjoy that. I really enjoy being able to speak more freely.
Yeah.
All right.
It's even sad to say we speak freely in America. That's anyway.
I know. Okay, so from Fight Back, do you think total war is the goal in the Middle East?
No. Total war, because not everybody's going to be on board for that. Now, this would have been the case if the conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia persists, but it's no longer. So what will be the objective? And yes, you have now one card left for the US, and that card is Israel. But even for the US, it's going to come a point where it's going to say, we can't be doing this anymore. You're noticing now the European Union is pushing away from this support for Israel per se, because they saw what took place in Ukraine. So the short answer is no.
Okay, so one last question, and it's from David K.
David K.
Mr. Oualaalou and Elizabeth. Hi, David K. What do you think will happen in the upcoming Taiwanese elections? Will the U.S. respect the winner if it is not the DPP?
Yeah, well, that's why on the other channel I posted the picture of Jake Sullivan with both the foreign ministers, I believe, or the national security advisors. Don't quote me on this because I don't remember, of Korea and I'm sorry, of South Korea and Japan, and the term that As a matter of fact, I do have it right here. Let me.
Oh, you have the picture?
No, I think
you
so.
might.
I think so. I usually keep those kind of stuff.
Yeah, the picture's staying
But
here.
because I share it with the community on the other channel, and I wrote something about that one. So let me share it with you.
Cool. You
And yeah, let me share it with you guys, and you'll see this one. Share screen. There we go. Post detail. Share.
There it is.
Right there. So, and what I wrote back then, I wrote the National Security Advisor said that the U.S. And its Asian allies, I call them puppets, will defend stability in the Taiwan Strait, which with the South China Sea is witnessing ongoing tensions that raises fears of a military conflict. So, and that's why I put that question. You all see what's coming, and no, we're gonna want to make sure to create tensions because the fear of the outcome of the elections. Most Taiwanese, at least the people that I talk to, they're like, we are Chinese. To those who make that arguments of we are Chinese. Yes, you have the Hans and so, but they are Chinese. When you look at the ethnicity of, they're all Chinese. That becomes just that question of how much we want to foment those tensions. And mind you, and I will repeat it, that conflict, we're not gonna be part of it. We're gonna let South Korea, the Philippines, Japan, Australia be up front.
Well, like Ukraine.
Exactly. So no, if the elections comes out not in favor of what the U.S. wants, the U.S. will let it go, of course, but that does not mean we'll stop fomenting tensions. That will always be there. Mark my word on it, because that's where we see the next front.
Well, and my question to always ask is, what is the actual reason for the conflict? Right.
Yeah.
If we're looking at the situation in Taiwan, a lot of information has been brought to light about the microchip situation.
Yeah.
And that perhaps that's the real reason for that conflict.
Which is too late now.
Right. So whatever the conversation is about, ethnic or what this belongs to what and this belongs to what, you guys ask yourself, what is the actual reason? Because it's not the reason. It's not to preserve democracy. You know what I'm saying? So figure out what the real reason is.
Those are hollow words. There's empty stuff,
always.
But it's too late for the chip anyway, because China has developed. So the U.S. realized the sanctions we embarked on backfired.
Sanctions have been backfiring.
It's the end.
Around
it's a sign of the end.
It is.
That's usually what it is.
And I want to say one more thing about that, David. And that is, if you guys follow Ray Dalio, who's a very, very interesting guy, and some people agree with him, some people don't. But one of the things he highlights as the end of an empire is costly external wars, and that's exactly what we have right now. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that forward, that is part of the end of an empire cycle.
All right, guys. Well, we hope you find this very informative. And remember, please hit that like button and subscribe if you have not done so. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow on Rumble. So remember to join us. As always, prepare yourself for changing world order. Till next time. Bye-bye.